He found me at home in Arizona, where most summers are scorching. I informed my mom of my illness. She measured my forehead and found 105.5 degrees Fahrenheit, which is high. I recall her giving me Tylenol and telling me to lie down. I slept in my room. It felt like minutes after falling asleep that I woke up refreshed. I was surprised because I felt like I had fallen asleep and was fine minutes later. I felt light on my feet. Daily aches and pains are normal, and I had some as a 12-year-old, but no pain. I was pain-free and relieved. I went to the kitchen to tell my mom I was okay, feeling terrific. As I approached the doorway, I saw my mom walking down the hallway, perhaps checking on me. After she entered the doorway, I replied, "Hey Mom, I feel good. I feel okay." But she brushed in front of me as if I wasn't there. Strangely, she didn't notice me, almost like I was invisible. I noticed her seated on my bed to the right after she stepped directly in front of me, and I told her I was fine. Someone appeared dozing on the bed. I thought, that's strange. Somebody's sleeping in that bed. I didn't realize it was me. When my mom went to get the phone, I saw my body on the bed. My lips were blue and purple, so I knew it was me. I looked about the room and at myself with heightened senses and good vision. It seemed like viewing through a magnifying glass. Again, I heard her come down the corridor and saw her pass me. She probably contacted the triage nurse to tell them she gave me Tylenol. I watched everything. The room suddenly became bright, translucent white, and I felt really peaceful. After that, I was in the hospital where my grandma died a year before. Walking down a large hallway with big windows on both sides, sunlight streamed in. I used to stroll this hallway before visiting my grandmother in the hospital. Instead of a soda machine, an escalator went straight up into the ceiling at the end of the hallway. Okay, this is really strange. How is the escalator going through the ceiling? I couldn't figure out where it came from. I approached the escalator, attempting to figure out how it worked and how it was feasible. I placed my foot on the step and ascended the escalator. It went through the ceiling. I thought I would stop the ceiling crash with my hand and jump off. On the escalator, my hand passed through the ceiling as I extended out. As I rose, I saw hospital rooms, families, patients, etc. I saw a thin, translucent veil behind me as I rose. I looked back and saw Earth. It was like entering space. I saw stars and wonderful hues. A magnificent place with green hills, grass, and flowers appeared before me. Everything astonished me. The sky was turning turquoise, lavender, and purple as I watched. I have never seen such amazing sky colors. The bright light from my room appeared again 15 feet away. It got closer till it was in front of me. A person appeared when I looked up. I wondered, could this be a spirit being or an angel? My spiritual grandmother preached about God and angels as a child. A person with hands extended appeared. Light came from his hands and feet. Light passed through what appeared to be wounds on the margins. The strong light obscured my vision, but I felt tranquil and cherished. This entity loved me more than anything on earth. I thought Earth could never offer this type of love. Then he addressed me. After saying, "Robert, do you know who I am?" I assumed it was an angel since I saw God and Christ as a hierarchy. As a child, I couldn't believe I was meeting God or the Son of God. I was asked again who he was. The answer to, "Are you Abraham?" was almost hilarious. When I asked if he was Moses, he responded no. After gathering my courage, I inquired, "Are you the Son of God?" He laughed again, but I didn't see his mouth move. We talked telepathically. After I identified him, I thought he was happy. He then took my hand and we walked across these gorgeous rolling hills. I was amazed by all I saw. Looking down, I saw grass and flowers swinging left to right. Everything here seemed to worship God and had life. It was idyllic and quiet. I thought, I don't want to be anywhere else. At 12, I wanted to stay there forever and never return to Earth. We started going, then he stopped and gestured left with his left hand. The moment he pointed, I knew what to do. I didn't question things like I used to. My knowledge was apparent. I knew what he wanted. He pointed left and saw this gorgeous temple. I don't remember seeing the temple when I arrived, but I was so absorbed in his love, peace, and light that I wanted to join it, and nothing else mattered. He pointed to a temple. and I thought, I need to go to that temple. I did so instantly. The temple doors opened as I stood in front of them. I scanned the room to my right and left as I entered. To the right were elegantly set tables with exquisite cutlery and wine glasses, like a wedding or feast. I observed individuals from many backgrounds gathering. The mood was loving and serene. I observed a group 30 feet to my left as I looked around the room. Among them, I looked at my grandmother. I was suddenly thrown in front of her and hugged her tightly. It was like a happy family reunion. I saw my Aunt Alice, who died 7 months after my grandma. After hugging her, I met my great-grandmother, whom I never met before. My grandma and aunt looked young, maybe in their 20s or 30s. After seeing my great-grandmother, additional folks waited to greet me. Everyone hugged and welcomed me. It felt like so many family members were present. It seemed like hundreds of individuals, but in the spirit, there is no sense of time. What I believed would take 30 to 45 minutes on Earth took seconds. After meeting everyone, my grandmother said, "When did you get here?" I didn't know how to respond. I said, "I don't know, I just got here." It was ridiculous, but it was the only way I could. I inquired, "Grandma, what is this place?" She said it was a temporary holding area. I didn't comprehend then. I always thought heaven was beautiful. Pearly gates, gold streets, but it wasn't. I received the necessary information and confirmation later. She stated, "Jesus wants to talk with you," after telling me it was a holding area, but I already knew who I was talking to. After she stated that, I left the temple again and saw the Lord. He extended his hand, grasped my hand, and we resumed walking. As we walked, the strangest question I could imagine him asking was, "What's the one thing you've always wanted to do but never could?" I thought, that's not a question I expected to be asked. But then I thought, as a kid, I've always wanted to fly. I loved Superman movies and wanted to fly. After he asked, I thought, it's silly, but I've always wanted to fly. Right after I thought that, we were in the sky. I saw waterfalls, rich foliage, birds of all kinds, and the Lord laughed. It was nearly unbearable relief and joyous laughter. Since he was so happy because I was happy, we laughed. It reminded me how much the Lord loves us and cares about the little things we consider unimportant. I don't know how long we were in the sky. Everything astonished me. Suddenly, we were grounded. Time prevents me from stating how long we were up there. It seems like we were there forever. After landing, I felt the Lord beaming at me even though I couldn't see him. I glanced up at him and he said, "It's time for you to go back. It's not your time." I wanted to fight, but I knew that if the God of all is asking me to go back, he knows what's best for me. Immediately, I thought, well, I guess I'm not going to get to say goodbye to my grandmother. But he cared. I suddenly found myself back in the temple, and everyone was ready to say goodbye. Everyone who had welcomed me was eager to leave. A tiny girl approached me, seeming familiar but unrecognizable. She remarked, "We were cousins," and I acknowledged her without adding, "Well, I don't know you." She'd hugged me before going to play, I assumed. I recall saying farewell after my grandmother, family, and ancestors hugged me. The last thing my grandmother said was, "He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you." That was huge because I felt abandoned by having to go back. I felt unwanted. After she stated that, I was outside the temple and saw the Lord again. I took his hands. He added, "I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. You have to go back. I have so much more for you to do, and it's time to go back." He hugged me tightly, giving me a new experience of love. I suddenly found myself on the escalator after the hug, and it was traveling quicker than before. Space, Earth, and the hospital appeared swiftly. People went about their business. I started passing through that veil again at the hospital. Passing through meant getting closer to the ground. After turning back on the escalator, I tried to sprint the other direction but couldn't get far. After 2 or 3 steps, I felt stuck, so I got off the escalator. I was walking around the back to figure out how it worked when it slowly disappeared. The steps disappeared till they vanished. I felt depressed about it. In the corridor, I thought, maybe I'll just go back to my grandmother's room. I don't know why. I knew she was somewhere else, but I had a glimmer of hope that she was in her room, in her bed. I walked to her room and saw that someone else was there. It broke my heart. As I left the room and entered the corridor, this wonderful, brilliant light came in through the windows. For some reason, I started strolling toward the window, thinking, maybe God changed his mind. Maybe he does want me to go home. I recall feeling and hearing that it will be okay and that he would never leave me. Once I felt peace again, I was back in my room and saw my mom on the phone. I thought, wow, she must have been on the phone for a long time because I didn't understand time. I heard her reply, well, I've given him Tylenol and put a damp cloth over his head to cool him down. After she finished talking on the phone, I glanced at everything and then at myself. I didn't realize it was me at first, but I did then. One thing that sprang to mind when I saw myself was how much I enjoyed the fact that God had made me flawlessly, lovely, and according to his will. I heard a voice suddenly. The voice continued, "Go next to your body and lay down." I did as instructed. Despite not knowing where it came from, I lay next to my body. That was like a vacuum that pulled me up. Once I was back in my body, I tried to clasp the bed sheets to confirm my survival. Pain, heat, and pains were palpable. I recall being too feeble to say a few words. My mom was on the bed edge, unconscious that I had died. I foot nudged her to catch her attention. She turned to see I had woken up. She handed me water and helped me sit up on my bed. I felt better after a minute of sitting up. My energy restored miraculously, and the fever subsided. After sitting up, I was exhausted, but I said, "Mom, I saw Grandma." She was surprised. I was all right after a few minutes, so we went to the kitchen. Then I described all I saw. My mom detected tears in my eyes while I lay down, possibly because I had to return. After telling her the story, I mentioned the small girl who said we were cousins. She denied having a deceased cousin I never met. She said, "Who did she look like, and how old was she?" I responded, "Well, she looked like she was around 6 or 7. Then I realized who she was. My Aunt Angela had a daughter who died days after birth. Smaller and with wavy hair, the girl resembled my aunt. I don't know if I met my aunt's child, but God, heaven, paradise, and death are real. When I die, I shall be at peace without dread. This taught me that God knows our hearts beyond death, despite our flaws. God understands our hearts. I believe in God, but many don't because they haven't experienced it. I wish everyone could experience it because I think more people would believe in the hereafter and in a God who loves you and cares about the little things you think are inconsequential. He loves you and has a plan for your life. Choosing to trust in him is risk-free because if there's nothing more after this, you'll only lose your faith in God. If you don't believe in God, you're back where you started.